How's it going, Bob? Couldn't do better. I did well my job interview. Good for you. He gave instructions that I need. That he could have made heads or tails of them. You can't do things at one time. It's out of the question. Do them one by one. Well, don't disturb her. Mind your own business, he whispered. If persistent bothering her like that, she'll lose her temper. He was so charged that he could resist temptation. He'll stop making fuss. It really gets on my nerves, she shouted. There's no point in talking back to Nick. He's the dictator, so to speak. They are very polite in his presence, but actually, they always talk about behind his back. You despise Nick, don't you? On the contrary, I look up to him. His constant insults aroused her anger. I'm fed up with just shuffling papers and pouring coffee. I've made up my mind to quit. In reality, many people have difficulty in making ends meet. How can you get by on 100,000 a year a month? Female clerks will complain about their routines, which are not challenging at all. Thanks to fundamental restructuring, our surplus has swelled threefold. Many people today simply loyalty to a company as an absurd notion. I have to commute all the way from distant suburb. I'm sick of it. I want to spend the rest of my life pursuing my deals. After retirement, Rita devoted herself to caring for orphans. For the sake of children in need, we cooperate to collect donations. The charity named after a man who gave away some 2 billion yen. His autobiography was released today and sold out by noon. Ted, who is often referred to as a man of integrity, is going around for mayor. The candidate was disappointed at the outcome of the election. The municipal council should concentrate on specific issues. It is the case that those who live on a pension are forced to lead a hard life. We should leave out this data. It's far from accurate. We tend to associate politicians with hypocrisy. They are primarily concerned with exploiting us, not with enhancing our living standards. The man once exerted a dominant influence on the Conservative Party, but now his power is diminishing. The spokesperson refused to make any comment, saying it's under investigation. The police says there are some pulling strings behind the scenes. The executive entertained bureaucrat at Ryote, or exclusive Japanese restaurant, hoping for something in return. His secretary flatly denied leaking any confidential information. No one dared to contradict his or her employer for fear of being fired. He sacrificed his promising career to retain his dignity. I might as well kill myself, reconcile myself to my fate. He was about to commit suicide by swallowing poison when he thought better of it. The vague rumor proved to be false. Nevertheless, some skepticism lingers on. As senior officials suspected of accepting bribes from the company, but there isn't sufficient evidence to arrest him. Jason, who was in charge of the project, was dismissed for corruption. To my knowledge, he had not involved in the fraud scheme. They found out the truth while examining a pile of relevant documents. During the trial, it came to light that they had been covering up illegal transactions for decades. The detective took down his testimony on the spot, word for word. For the first time in my life, I felt a pang of conscience, but there was no other way out. I am still haunted by a vivid nightmare I had last night. By and large, reporters don't hesitate to intrude on one's privacy. They also revised the manuscript over and over again. He is the second to none when it comes to finding fault with others. On the whole, the elite are not sensitive to criticism. When a tabloid revealed that he was a drug addict, his reputation was all but ruined. They considered it every aspect of the defense program and pointed out the numerous flaws. We will not tolerate anyone who engages in terrorism. The Notre Dame was ultimately captured and confined to jail. Troops were swiftly called in to put down the riot. We should appeal to reason instead of resorting to violence. I suggest we adapt to flexible tactics for the moment. The armed forces succeeded in occupying the entire territory. Under the circumstances, the enemy has no choice but to surrender. They can't hold out any longer. Sooner or later, the hostage will be set free. Under the reign of tyranny, innocent people were deprived of their citizenship. Some soldiers were reluctant to obey the commands. These regimes are bound to collapse. The Allies condemned the invasion as a violation of UN resolutions. We cannot rule out the possibility that civil war will break out in that country. The colony declared independence and became a republic. An immense monument was erected of the honor of the noble patriot. He got down on his knees and prayed for the souls of the deceased. The Supreme Court is located near the Imperial Palace. The protest group protested against a ban on abortion. Senator Ford remained neutral in the bitter controversy. Ford had been in a difficult situation all week long. He is no longer capable of coping with it. The summit talks of to be broadcast simultaneously throughout the world. Diplomatic dialogue helped put an end to the conflict. Johnson was appointed as a goodwill ambassador to foster mutual understanding between the two nations. The specialists predict international tension will build up. In my opinion, permanent peace is nothing but an illusion. Ethnic minorities struggle against prejudice, poverty, and oppression. We must make every effort to avoid all discrimination. The immigrant endured physical and mental pain. The amendment was rejected because it didn't take racial diversity into account. Needless to say, the refugees were longing for freedom. According to surveys, 3 in 5 people today are indifferent foreign affairs. What will become of Japan-US relations if the security treaty expires? Unless Japan eliminates its unfair tariffs, the US will impose sanctions. Trade friction might arise between the two nations at any moment. Our top priority was this settle dispute once and for all. We are ready to meet them halfway. The federal budget was narrowly concluded to Congress. He argues that the administration must look for alternative sources of revenue. Also, that the overwhelming majority are favorable in legislation. The cops are searching for the clues to the brutal murder. That must be insane. He can't distinguish vice from virtue. The fingerprint left on the weapon corresponds with the suspect. It took us all by surprise when the noted psychologist was accused of kidnapping. The jury's guilty verdict gave rise to a widespread debate. They pleaded for mercy, but he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his crime. The officer on duty perceived an elderly man coming up behind him. He caught sight of the thief attempting to break into the house. The day before yesterday, he witnessed a weird incident in the wilderness. I became aware someone stared at me from across the aisle, so I turned around, but there was no one in sight. She screamed with horror and someone took hold of her arm. Informed of her safety, he breathed a sigh of relief. The bullet penetrated his chest, leaving him in critical conditions. At present, it's still uncertain whether the deliberately or by accident. A dairy caught fire and burned down, leaving a heap of ashes. All of a sudden, the firework warehouse exploded and took 2 days without a blaze. The bombing was in the 30-story building, and more than 50 people are seriously wounded. A cargo vessel bound for Athens sank in the Mediterranean without a trace. The wreckage was brought to death during the expedition to the Antarctic. The tragedy must be remembered so as not to be repeated. The exhibition of profound insight into ancient civilization. Giotto is credited to sowing the seeds of the Italian Renaissance. Bob mounted the portrait in a fancy frame, but it was upside down. This magnificent cathedral dates back to the Middle Ages. Age and religion inspired him to create splendid sculptures. They explored the desert in search of the buried treasure. The millionaire settled on acquiring the masterpiece, no matter how much it cost. Myths and legends should be handed down from generation to generation. The linguist is fluent in several Chinese dialects. The tribe worships its ancestors and speaks its own languages, which is not familiar to us. The anthropologist says all the customs still prevail in the province. The wicked witch cast an evil spell on the man, and turned him into a bag. They proceeded along the steep path, which was the sole access to the border, when a big ape emerged from the cave. They got frightened and ran away. Believe it or not, I saw an alien, and then it vanished. Give me a break.